Hey, I'm Jane, and I spent my childhood on the seacoast of Maryland. If you love thrilling adventures that make your blood run cold, then give this video a thumbs up. And make sure to subscribe to the channel. I promise it will get hot in here. My mom came from an ancient Peruvian family that possessed sacred knowledge. She was a parcel mouth. She understood the language of snakes and could command them. Although she dressed not like a shaman with a tambourine and tons of talismans, but like a modern woman. And she had a regular job. She was a zookeeper. Mom didn't use makeup at all, and at her age, she looked like a very young girl. When I grew up, she was mistaken for my twin sister, and young guys who were 3 times younger than her were coming up on the street to get her number. The people around considered it magic, and some women called my mom a witch out of envy. But she only laughed in response and liked to tell me, "My baby, remember once and for all, miracles don't happen. There's only a certain degree of knowledge about how everything works in this world. Anyone who knows the nature of reality is able to live 1,000 years, learn to fly or walk on water. You can too, if, of course, you will learn about this world through the eyes of your heart." During such heart-to-heart talks, I squinted with delight and imagined myself as Doctor Strange from the Marvel Universe. And at night I dreamed I was hovering over the city and could get into any place imaginable just by thinking of it. Have you ever dreamed about something like this? But I don't think that I wanted to be a bearded guy in a red cloak. I dreamed not about his looks, but about the superpower and knowledge of Doctor Strange. I used it to save the world from environmental disasters and global warming. I wanted to bring humanity to its senses and make people take care of our planet, so that one day everything wouldn't end up like in the apocalypse movies. In short, I still had grandiose plans for my life, and all my childhood I was growing up with the feeling that I had some kind of a special mission. I believed that I was born to save the world one day. I also really wanted to learn how to talk to snakes, though I was terribly afraid of them. Holding my breath, I watched from the window as my mom went out onto the lawn in front of the house at night and lay down right in the grass. At that moment, snakes from all around would come to her, wrap around her arms, legs, and head. It was so scary. Of course, I was forbidden to go outside at such moments. Mom, along with her night guest, who covered our front lawn with snaky knots, would start to hiss and twine. They would talk for a long time like this. Snake mouths told my mom about everything that happened in different parts of the world, and it was the most reliable news from all over the world. This is how the global postal serpent network worked. "How do you do this?" I asked my mom once, unable to resist. "Dear Jane, when you grow up, you'll know everything. Since you're my daughter, this gift is in your blood," she answered me mysteriously, and from her gaze, superstitious goosebumps ran through my body. And to prepare for this important moment, I began to collect earthworms and put them under my pillow. You probably think I'm completely crazy, and I understand your reaction, but I decided to train on worms because I was scared to death of all the slithering creatures. And this way I was overcoming my fear and preparing for the initiation, about which my mom spoke so mysteriously. Mommy reacted to my training calmly, with a slight grin. But Dad, who was the most ordinary banker, would come into a slight shock when he would find crawling living creatures in my bed. And not because he was afraid of earthworms, but because he was sure that at my age, girls should be interested in elegant dolls and dresses, chasing butterflies and watching cartoons about princesses. "Honey, this is all your parenting," Dad grumblingly scolded my mom, disgustedly catching another worm on my duvet cover. "And what kind of example of what a young lady should be are you giving her? Can you imagine what kind of person she'll grow up into?" Mom reacted to such attacks with a slight smile and tightly hugged Dad. And he couldn't resist and softened his anger for mercy. Dad loved her very much. He knew all about her oddities a long time ago, before he asked her to marry him. But he was afraid seeing the exact same unusual child growing up in their family. One day, after an evening session with snakes, my mom came back very anxious. She ignored my dad's questions about what had happened and said she had a headache and went to bed. And the next morning when my dad woke up, it turned out that Mom was not home and there was a note on the table. "My darling, take care of our baby. I have to urgently fly to Peru. I knew you wouldn't let me go, but I couldn't do otherwise. It's a matter of saving the planet and saving the human form of life on Earth. Don't look for me, it's pointless. I hope everything ends well, and we'll be together again very soon. I love you dearly." And those were her last words. Honestly, at first I didn't believe what my dad and I learned from the letter. It seemed to me that at any moment a key would turn in the keyhole and the door would open and I would hear my mom's light footsteps, and a familiar smile would light up our slightly gloomy living room. But days passed and my mom didn't return. I stopped counting them because the days and months of waiting soon turned into years. My dad and I still lived together, and our family became more normal. The snake stopped coming at night, and Mom's image became distant and inaccessible. Despite the request in the letter, Dad tried to find Mom, but it was all in vain. Her traces were lost at the airport, and according to the airline, she boarded a plane for Lima, the capital of Peru. But this flight landed there without her on board. Moreover, even the surveillance cameras could not capture her getting off the plane. It's as if she had disappeared into thin air during the flight. In the meantime, I moved into high school, and from a clumsy baby, I turned into a young beauty, a spitting image of my mother. And just like her, I didn't use makeup, my huge eyes and perfect skin didn't need it, and any model would envy my shiny long hair. To my dad's delight, I got a bit smarter and stopped putting worms under my pillow. But in memory of my mom, I got a job at the zoo where she was an animal keeper. I cleaned the cages and fed the animals in my after-school free time. I would sit in front of the glass aquarium with the giant Peruvian anaconda for hours. It seemed to me that the snake knew where my mom was, and I still believed that one day the magic gift would break open in me, and this deadly 7-meter-long reptilian would give me a message from her. But the anaconda remained silent and showed no interest in me, not even gastronomic. Maybe because it was full, having swallowed half a pig for dinner, or maybe because I was a crazy and very stupid girl who believed in fairy tales. And what I saw with my own eyes on the lawn as a child was just a dream. Love for animals sparked an obsession with natural sciences in me, and most of all, I was fond of biology. I could sit for hours in the library studying the literature on this topic. No wonder I won the Biology Olympiad, and together with other gifted school children, I was invited to go on an expedition. Where do you think? Yes, the expedition was heading to Peru, the place where traces of my mom disappeared. Guys, when coincidences like this happen in life, I'm getting once again convinced that some unknown mystical powers are working in this world. So it's important to carefully watch for the signs. They are not accidental. Dad, of course, was against my participation in the expedition. "Jane, I've already lost my beloved woman. If something happens to you, I won't survive it," he said. And his tone made me realize how difficult all these years after Mom's disappearance were for him. But it was decided, and Dad had to accept it. He understood that my freedom-loving nature couldn't be kept within 4 walls. The easy way or the hard way, I'm leaving anyway. "Take care of yourself, baby, and come back soon," Dad shouted at the airport, from where our group was flying out in the early morning, and there were tears in his eyes. But I knew that I would be all right, and I secretly hoped to find the traces of my disappeared mom. On the first day after our arrival, we were given equipment, and together with a group of scientists and a local guide, we went deep into the Peruvian jungle. Oh, this is the kingdom of mosquitoes, a real paradise for nerds like me. But to be honest, not everyone in our team was as enthusiastic. The participation of a girl named Megan was bought by her rich parents for a tidy sum. She got into the expedition to be with her boyfriend Kurt, and she was jealous of everyone. Megan's bright makeup and pompous hairstyle looked ridiculous in the jungle, and for some reason I was sure that this Barbie doll wouldn't last long, and I was right. A few days later, all the paint peeled off Megan's face. Her hair was looking like dry glass, and a spectacular painted beauty turned into a gray mouse with small eyes. She threw a terrible scandal and demanded that we take her back. But we'd already gone too far along our route, and the team ignored her hysterical demands. Kurt, on the other hand, began to show attention to me, and it infuriated Megan even more than her ruined looks. Once Kurt told me with admiration in his voice, "Jane, I see a girl with such natural beauty for the first time. At first, I waited with interest for the jungle to show your true face like Megan's, but over time, I realized that in your wild nature, you've become even more beautiful. It turns out your appearance is real," Kurt said awkwardly and enthusiastically. From such a sincere compliment, I blushed and paid attention to him for the first time. After this conversation, we started spending a lot of time together. We could talk for hours. And this, of course, was making Megan very angry. But the jungle drank so much of her energy that there was none left for jealousy scenes. One morning, I woke up to the shocking news our local guide who was leading our group along the route disappeared. We didn't know not only where to go, but also how to go back. It hit the panic button, and the decision had to be made urgently. The provisions wouldn't last us a long time. The same night, I woke up from the fact that my chest felt squeezed with something heavy, and when I opened my eyes, I got cold with horror. My body was wrapped around by a giant Peruvian anaconda. with its little unblinking eyes, and they were directly in front of mine. And how did it get into the tent? But before I had time to say goodbye to my life, the snake loosened its grip and crawled out in one powerful leap. From the way it shook its head, I knew she wanted me to follow her. You probably think I'm crazy again, don't you? But I actually followed that snake. And half an hour later, I found that I was followed by Kurt, with eyes full of fear. Later, he said that when he saw me in the company of a giant snake, he thought he was hallucinating. That night, I had no time to explain to him what was going on, and I myself didn't fully understand it. So I put my fingers to my lips and gave him the sign to be quiet. Meanwhile, the snake showed us to some hole in the ground and busily retired into the thick of the jungle, and Kurt and I climbed into the hole. You say it's madness, but at that moment I turned off my brain and blindly trusted my instincts. And we ended up in the sewers. So gross. The memory of that terrible stench makes me sick. We moved in the sewer on all fours for several kilometers, and what I experienced during this time cannot be described in words. And Kurt, believe me, had a hard time too. The smell made him completely zone out, and he was far behind me. And this pipe led us to a prison cell in which a gray-haired woman with huge eyes and a face of a young girl was sitting chained to the wall, and it was my mom. God, what did they do to her? Since her hair turned snow white, I thought, and I threw my arms around her neck and sobbed. "Ooh, baby, you really smell," jokingly said my mom in response to my kisses, and then seriously added, "Jane, I'm glad to see you, but there's no time for hugs. The snakes told me you were in the jungle, and I sent my helper Najina to get you, that huge snake that brought you here. We are in the lair of a madman who's decided to destroy humanity, and this madman is my brother and your own Uncle Billy," my mom whispered bitterly. She said that our relative, a descendant of the same ancient family as her and me, had a gift of understanding bird language and controlling birds. 5 years ago, he got a multiple personality disorder, and my uncle decided that he was a raven. This mental disorder is called zoanthropy. Billy is convinced that people should be destroyed like parasites that are destroying the planet, and in the last few years, he's developed a formula for a substance that affects human DNA and destroys the body. He plans to spread the infection around the world with the help of birds. All this time, I tried to stop him, but he treacherously lured me into a trap, and before my mom could finish, the door suddenly creaked. Mom screamed in horror, but it was too late. At that moment, someone grabbed my arms with a death grip. It was Billy with bloodshot eyes. But before I had time to get scared, I heard a dull boom, as if someone had hit an overripe watermelon. And the grip immediately loosened. Uncle was immobilized by a barely standing, dirty and stinking Kurt, who had just climbed out of the sewer. He realized that we needed help and hit the madman on his head with a heavy pipe. And right after that, our savior vomited right on my unconscious uncle. Then there's a long story about how we freed Mom from the chains, searched for our group, and let it out of the jungle. About how my uncle was sent to a psychiatric hospital and how happy Dad was when Mom finally returned home. Or about Kurt leaving Megan a couple of days after we returned and us starting to date. Or how, on the day I came of age, my gift awakened. All these are small things compared to the fact that we had saved humanity. And if it wasn't for Mom, me, and my boyfriend Kurt, the next day may never have come.